companies. Like you're competing against 10,000 companies per day, online and offline. So you've got to figure out how you break through all that clutter. And the only way that we've figured out how to do it, and all of our clients have success because we do it this way, is we do a really deep dive into their consumer or investor data to understand what motivates them to make decisions and what's going to break through the clutter.
This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners. Hey everyone, excited to do this today. Phillip, this is going to be a little different podcast. Phillip is a good friend. We met, years ago. I don't know if it was 10 years ago, but we were at a business mastery event with Tony Robbins together and met and started talking, became friends. And a few weeks ago, I guess now it's a few months ago, I was down in Florida and hanging out with you, and you're like, I should have you on my podcast. And I said, I should have you on my podcast. So we're going to do this a little different, cover a couple different topics and just jump back and forth. So
yeah,
this should
I'm
be fun. A
excited
little different than what I usually do.
And for my listeners of my podcast, this is going to be sort of a one interview between the two of us having a conversation on marketing, on business, on growth, on failure, on a lot of different things that we cover in my pod. And you're going to learn a lot about Cody, but maybe you get some insights on me as well, and probably vice versa for you, Cody.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. So, I was thinking when we were talking about doing this, it's a little bit of what our relationship and how it evolved. I think we met at that event and then hopped on the phone, started talking through some different things like culture and client experience and that, and then get together every time I come down to your neck of the woods in Florida, grab coffee and talk through what's going on in the business and how it's growing. And we had some great conversations this last time.
So
that is true. You have been here. I've been to see you more than you've been to see me, though. So
yeah. So I love to tell the meeting story. So if you're good, so I from my perspective, so I'm at Tony Robbins' Business Mastery, and I went to one that was in Palm Beach, and Cody was not there, but they played a video of Cody's speech, and then 6 months later I went back because I kind of have to go to these things like 2 or 3 times to feel like I got everything out of it. It's kind of like watching a movie a couple times. You miss stuff the first time around. But the second time you actually were on stage and you showed a picture. It wasn't out of partisanship, but you showed a picture interviewing former President George W. Bush.
Oh, and that's right.
Well, that was my old boss. So I feel like I just should go introduce myself. And then I remember Josh Robbins introduced us, Tony's son. And and then I said, hey, I'm starting this political ad agency, marketing agency, and I'd love some advice based on your speech. And then we started talking, and then and we'll talk about this out because I've got questions about it. But you talked to me about your big personal impact program at Advisors Excel. It's called the BPI. It's PPI. It was personal.
I like BPI. I like that better.
Impact. Sorry, because we're go big and win big media. So, and then we just kind of hit it off. And boy, you played jokes on me early on. Remember, I told you I wanted to contribute to a charity of your choice, and you sent me to some crazy charity and I was like, is he serious? And then I didn't know you. You were just playing practical jokes. I was like, all right, I know I'm gonna like this guy. Like this is a good dude. So that's the story of my version of how we met. So I just wanted to lay that out.
No, that is. But I would say, to maybe give, just as people listen to mine, you've been a great source of wisdom, especially marketing. I know a lot of the stuff we used during COVID. We may even jump into that. You had all this data coming in on just where consumers were at, where their mind was at, a lot of stuff that we used to support our advisors during that period of time. Like what were the messages that were really resonating, what people want to hear. And so I'm sure we'll jump into some of that too.
I literally was just looking through some new data
resource
yesterday, so I'm happy I've got some interesting insights. But anyway, let's jump in. Why don't you lead it off, and then we'll just have a conversation.
Well, to me, that actually sounds like a good place to lead off. So why don't we jump into the data? I think one of the things that you've done, right? So political marketing company helping get politicians elected. New book out, which everyone should read. I thought I had it here to hold up, but now I can't find where I said it.
The Undefeated marketing system.
So great book, just talking about how, politicians are great marketers and anything a business can learn from those. But so that's one of the businesses, but you also have another marketing business that helps business owners, businesses like Advisors Excel are the advisors that we work with. I know when we were together, a couple big pest control companies that you were doing some really cool work for and just helping them figure out where their message was off and help them grow their sales. So, but a lot of what you do, and I think this probably goes back to your political side of things, is driven by the data. So maybe that's a good question I'll throw out to you and start with is like, why is data so important maybe today more than ever before? And then what are some of the things that you're seeing, at the consumer level and the data that you guys use?
Well, it's how about even the investor level, right?
For sure.
We are seeing, according to Forbes, we're seeing up to 10,000 ads a day online and offline. I mean, it's just crazy, right? And so what I'm trying to get business owners to understand is that the marketing game is kind of rigged right now. It's not kind of rigged. It is rigged. It's rigged against 99% of business owners. The ones that succeed are probably the 100 million and above because they understand how important the data is in their work. Like, I always talk about like Facebook is not a social media company. They're a data company that does social media. Google's not a search engine company. They're a data company that has a search engine. And like even like Coca-Cola is not a soft drink and water bottle company. They're a data company that also sells. Like, so the big companies understand that they are data companies first. They have to understand their customer, and they have to really, really invest in a ton of data to understand where that is. And so, we get this in politics. So for 25 years, I've worked on political campaigns. At this point, 1,407 election wins, 3 presidential wins. But the commonality in that is that we follow a 5-step systematic formula to elect all of our candidates on the marketing side. And I talk about this, in the book, the whole book. The subtitle of my book is How to Grow Your Business and Build Your Audience Using the Secret Formula That Elects Presidents. And that's the whole point. But really the secret to everything is step 1, which is a deep dive into your voter or consumer data to understand where your audience is. And where people get it wrong is that we are seeing 10,000 ads a day. And if you think that your radio ad or your digital ad or your Facebook ad is going to break through the clutter of all 10,000 ads a day, because like if you're an investor, like for your audience, or you're selling a product like my audience, right? You're not competing against people in your industry. You're competing, let's say you're an advisor and you're selling products and services to investors. You're competing at shoe companies right now, water bottle companies, hair care product companies, clothing companies. Like you're competing at 10,000 companies per day, online and offline. So you've got to figure out how you break through all that clutter. And the only way that we've figured out how to do it, and all of our clients have success because we do it this way, is we do a really deep dive into their consumer or investor data to understand what motivates them to make decisions and what's going to break through the clutter. And because of that, we have helped investors, but we've helped a ton of businesses break through that wall. And I'm writing a blog on this. It's going to come out soon, but I'm so used to the 98.3% of the businesses I've come in contact with in the last few years, they want to get rich quick pill in marketing. Facebook, let's just throw some ads up on Facebook. Let's cross our fingers. Let's hope it works. And it doesn't work, and then they get frustrated, and then they fire a marketing agency, and they hire another one, and then they fire them, and then they hire another one, and they fire them. And it's like, well, what if you could get it right from the beginning? What if you didn't have to make all those mistakes? Because there's a way to do it. Now, I do it one way. There are other ways to do it, but we have a partnership with the largest data collection, analytics, and AI company in America. And we have 200 million plus American consumers in our database, 550 million connected devices. We're tracking 1 billion online purchasing decisions every day and 1 trillion searches. And so we're able to tell people automatically on the step 1, like what social media platforms their customers are going to in a chronological order, what their values are in life, what they read, what they watch, how they consume media, how they want to receive their marketing. A lot of people like to receive their marketing through email or through direct mail, except the business has been spending $1 gazillion on Facebook ads. And so knowing these things starts you out on the right foot immediately. So ultimately, we've been studying the consumer markets, and so many things. Every month, things have changed over the last year and a half. And the one thing that we're really seeing right now is how much the customer or even the employee is in charge. We're in a different world right now. And I think every business owner out there is seeing this. Cody, you're probably seeing this. I'm seeing this. The employees are in charge right now. I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming on a family trip about 3 weeks ago. And the day we were leaving, we pulled into a Starbucks to get some coffee to drive we were driving out west for a few weeks. So we pulled in the Starbucks was giving away free college tuition to people to come work for them. Like they can't get anybody to work. About 5 minutes later, we stopped to get gas. And we go into the gas station. The gas station, in behind the register, they were offering $21 an hour because they can't get anybody to work for them. And in the higher echelon, even like in my business, like people in my team have told me they're getting hit up almost on a daily basis by headhunters who say you can make more money and get a bigger title if you quit your job and come work for this other company. And so when we talk, you and I are going to talk about it because I want to go into the culture stuff. But if you're not building a strong culture, if you're not building something that people find meaning in whether it's your customers or your own team, you're dead in this environment. And that's what we're finding in the data right now, is that right now the employee market has all the control over the employer market.
A couple things you said there, I'm going to ask you to jump a little deeper into, but another just interesting perspective. You and I haven't talked. We had Jason Dorsey. I don't know if you've read any of Jason's stuff, but just one of the best kind of researchers around generational differences, just spoke at an event that we had. And he said something fascinating. He said, the millennial kind of generation and below, COVID was kind of their first big life-changing event. Like it was, for like our generation, kind of our 9/11, that thing that you'll never forget. Sure. And he said what it's done is it's created just a lot of change in the marketplace. He said what they're seeing across the country is it's the largest exodus of millennials and below from the place that they're working at, because it's this moment that's made them question, like everything in life. Do I love where I'm working? Do I want to be an entrepreneur? And ironically, I think this most recent Forbes magazine talked about 2020, we saw the largest growth in new businesses formed ever. Like, I mean, it's just, like 100 million businesses or something crazy. And that may be a big exaggerated number, but it was like the largest that they've seen for forever. And it's because, people did have this opportunity to question, like, hey, is this what I want to keep doing? So we will hit on culture, because I think it's a huge part of that for sure. Hey, let me ask you a couple quick marketing things, because you sent me a pretty fascinating message. I think it was maybe even last week. I feel like I read it this past weekend, talking about like, hey, here's some marketing statistics you need to know. So a couple things, and this is something that we try and tell the advisors that we work with. There's such a huge push to want to do everything through digital marketing. I think that's the hot topic right now. But the two things you said, and I think a thing that we're telling people all the time is being able to, maybe we talk about this, you've heard me say this at Tony's event, but like list building is the most important thing you can do, and being able to build a list of people that you can communicate directly with, that you're not beholden to Facebook or YouTube or one of those platforms, or Amazon is important. But a couple things that jumped out at me from that thing that you sent me, that maybe I was just going to ask you to talk about, how important email and direct mail is. The numbers around that were pretty fascinating, I thought. And then the other, because a lot of what I see, and probably rightfully so, a lot of the advisors I see are spending most of their time on Facebook. The advisors we work with, their average client's probably 55 plus, kind of that mass affluent marketplace. But the message that I've been saying is, like, I think YouTube has a very, very bright future, and there were some pretty incredible statistics around it also. So maybe email, direct mail, any thoughts you have around that, and then YouTube, I'd love you to maybe just talk about that a little.
Well, we saw a massive in the data that we look at, right, and with our own clients and customers that we look through. a massive increase in direct mail was working during COVID and has continued to. I think it's something like 95% of people will look at your direct mail, right? On the high end, 20 to 30% of people will see your email. I'm a big email fan, by the way. I'm not a proponent of, or I'm not discounting 20 to 30%. I think that's a high number. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So we did, so if people that follow my stuff, and if you listen, we do this, the data I just told you about, like we do this for specific clients. We can overlay their customer base, their investor base, their client base, and we can track their movements online and then identify all these factors, where they're going to, what social media platforms are going to do, how they want to receive their marketing, what their values are in life, all the things I said earlier. We just did one for a company a couple of weeks ago. Now, I've talked about it on my podcast a little bit, but they are they're a pretty cool idea. You may like this. They sell pools, but like they rent above ground pools. So they will, if you live in Arizona and you have a backyard and you have space and you're like, man, I wish we had a pool, but I don't want to spend $50,000, $60,000. They will literally come install a pool in your backyard and you pay $500, $600, $400 to $700 a month, depending on the size. And you can keep it for 3 months and they'll maintain it. They'll come every week and clean it and put all the chlorine and everything in. And then at the end of 3 months, they'll take it away. They'll just pack it up and ship it out. And I'm like, God, I think this is the coolest idea, right? And so we started, talking to them, and we did a data report for them. We called it a customer insights report. And they wanted to look at, they're a new company, so they didn't have a customer list. So we tracked their website. We put a pixel on their website. So we tracked anybody that comes to their website, and then we're tracking their online movements. And then we also looked at some model audiences. So we looked at, I think, a 55 and older market and a 50 and younger market. The 55 and older market wanted to receive their marketing through direct mail. Older, it makes more sense. They go through their mail. They have time, you know. And then the younger generation wanted email. Now, before these people started to spend a bunch of money on marketing, they now know the differences between the two markets they're targeting. Like, what is different? The other was on both sides, both audiences that we targeted or looked at. There was something like 90% of them wanted to receive their marketing messages via audible means. So what I mean by that is radio, Spotify, podcasts, streaming audio, things like that. That's where they consume the most media. Not internet, not digital, not TV, not streaming, not connected TV. It's audio. So we said, great. But we didn't go and say, all right, let's run a bunch of Facebook ads. Let's go. Woohoo. No, like we go, all right, well, for the older group, we're going to be writing, their strategic plan next. But it's going to be leading, the tip of the spear is going to be radio, because the older audience listens to more radio than streaming or podcast. And it's going to be direct mail. Now, when I talk about direct mail, I'll never do a direct mail piece without what we call a digital chase. So we know that it was something like 90% of the older audience was on Facebook, but we also were able to find out that they do not purchase products on Facebook. So if you're going to go advertise, it's a branding mechanism, not a conversion mechanism. And so we said, but if you're going to send direct mail, we can overlay your mail list on Facebook, and those people can see the same ad you mail to them. They'll see it on Facebook. So it's a double hit. And we've seen like between a 15 and a 35% higher conversion rate by doing what's called a digital mail chase. So adding digital into the mail program, right? Not leading with digital and hoping it works and all that stuff. So you can see how granular we get by what the data says to us, right? And the younger audience, they want to do email. And so I think that's great. So I'm telling them like, and the good thing is they're all direct to consumer. They don't need Amazon. They're not selling, they're selling pools. But I talked to this business owner recently. He sold baby products. And he had built his company in an 8-figure business selling baby products, and all on Amazon. And then a private equity company bought him. But part of his earnout, and you most of your audience will understand this, part of his earnout was he had to continue to build it over the next few years. Well, he signed the sale paperwork, got it all done. And about 2 months later, some of his cheaper competitors unbeknownst to him, decided to start a campaign to 1-star review his products on Amazon. And he got so overwhelmed by all these cheap competitors, and so when you're on Amazon and you can vote helpful or report on a review. And so all the cheap competitors started upvoting helpful on all the 1-star reviews. So now when you go to this particular page, it's all 1-star reviews for his products because they've been upvoted. And his sales went from $900,000 a month to $90,000 a month on Amazon. And I asked him when he came to me, and he said, yeah, I haven't sold on my own website. And I said, well, you better shift. And he's like, I know, but I'm kind of screwed right now. And he's totally screwed. And so, yeah, one of the things I preach is like, you need to own your list, own your data. And then you've got to use Amazon in some respects. You got to use Facebook. You got to use these platforms, but it shouldn't be the tip of the spear. What do you see like with advisors, right? Like, how are they marketing? We've helped a couple of advisors over the years. And so I have an understanding of how they do, but what do you see generally in the way they want to market and what you guys are saying?
Well, so a couple of things relevant to what you just talked about, I think. And, the last year and a half has been interesting because pre-COVID, I would say about half of the advisors that we work with, most of their new client generation was done through live events. So what that would tend to be is some sort of direct mail piece out to the consumer, typically inviting them to, some of them would be like a dinner event. Yep. Some would be more of a educational event at a university or library, but it's like, come sit through this hour presentation. We're going to teach you some financial topics, some things that you need to be aware about, with the goal at the end of that, if they like the advisor, they trust them, they want to come in and meet with them. So what we're seeing is that come back in a massive way. Like go back to March 2020 and that all shut down. Like nobody did live events for a year basically. But one of the things we've been telling advisors, and so this may speak to even some of your audience, I think people are so longing, and this will fade, I think, over time, but they're so ready to get back together with other people and feel normal again, that there's this golden opportunity to be able to leverage that, and then in our business, I think, and you could probably even speak to this better than I could, and this is not a political statement as much as anytime there is a change in administrations, there's usually some uncertainty that comes with that. So, what's it going to mean for taxes and spending and things that could impact a person who's retired on a fixed income. Right. So, I think for our advisors right now, and this is a message we've been trying to preach, and it's probably not unique to the financial advisor business, but you have this golden opportunity of like people want to get back together. They want to be around other people in person, so you can leverage that. But you also have this uncertainty that's in the marketplace right now that I think is also fueling, people a little worried and wanting to come back out and get a second opinion. So, we just had our biggest month ever, and I think it's going to keep going because of some of those things.
Run of 2020 and early, first half of 2021, has that also helped with people going, hey, I need to get in the market? Like it's created some momentum?
I think it has, but and this is a weird thing to say, but I think what helps more than anything is almost volatility. And so I think you've seen, I don't know when this will actually come out based on when we're recording, but yesterday I think the market was down 3.5%, 4%, so it had this big dip. And so it's a little bit of the uncertainty, but people definitely have that greed factor of like, I'm missing out, so they want to be a part of that. And we saw people, who either went to cash, early on and missed out on all those returns, which is, this isn't a podcast about timing the market, but that generally doesn't work very, very well. So I think that definitely drives some of it. But one thing I just wanted to point out, the advisors that we're seeing have a ton of success are doing exactly what you said. It's a direct mail piece. That is a call to action, usually to come to an event, but then they're also remarketing to that exact same list on typically Facebook, maybe also pixeling them in a way where they're chasing them around with, some kind of retargeting ads too, to really just amplify that message. And it's such a cheap, cheap, easy way to amplify what you're doing there. versus just, a one-time marketing campaign, figuring out different ways that you can market.
Well,
I think that's what I'm seeing on some of the digital stuff.
One of the things that sticks out that you just said that I think everybody should take away from here, whether you're an advisor or you're a business owner selling to customers or clients, is the personal touch you guys do in your marketing. And look, if you've got 10,000 customers, you can't take them all out to dinner. I get that. I write about in my book a couple stories. There was a Guidry's organic pecan butter farm. And when I ordered their pecan butter online, they sent me a handwritten thank you note with a recipe from the dad that started the farm about how to put it on ice cream, and you'll love it, right? And I just thought, that's the coolest marketing ever. It didn't cost them a dime. And then I talk about this clothing store called Billy Reed. They're out in New York. And my wife orders clothes from there. And they, the manager of the New York store wrote her a personal thank you note when she ordered some clothes. And my wife was like, I'll always be ordering from them from this point forward, because that woman cared about me enough to write me a thank you note. And I know I can call her and ask her for advice on clothes that I see online in the future. And I just think this kind of goes back to what you originally asked in that, is that I just continue, like, we live in a world of 10,000 ads a day. Everything is so impersonal that the difference that makes the difference right now beyond words, especially after COVID, is how can you make it personal? Yep. And so when you guys do these dinners, we set them up, like, take me through that process, because I think whether it's people that listen to my podcast or yours, I think there's value in the message that they're giving, that they're, it's probably not all business. It's about, how do you getting to know them, being a part of the community and all that stuff. It's building trust. It's like the one factor I see in all marketing right now, which lacks, and what's crushing the most is if you can win the trust game. Yep.
I'll never forget. I'm sure Dan Kennedy, so kind of marketing guru. He said something. We were working with him years ago. He was doing a bunch of work helping our advisors, and he said something. He's like, you all spend way too much time trying to impress people with how smart you are about your financial knowledge. And he's like, here's what you need to know. He's like, and he used himself. He's like, I have no interest in understanding how any of that stuff works. He's like, if I did, I'd probably be a financial advisor, right? He's like, I care about one thing when I'm meeting you for the first time, seeing you, is like, do I trust you? He's like, that's it. He's like, I don't care. He's like, you can speak all that language. It doesn't make any sense to me. All I'm trying to ascertain is, do I trust you enough to hand over my life savings? So I think one of the important messages, and we've done that not just with Dan, but some other people we work with, one of the things that we tell all our advisors, and if you see our best ones that do this, and candidly, I think we try and do it even in our, as we're recruiting advisors, right? If you were to come to one of our events where we're trying to convince a financial advisor to join Advisors Excel, we're going to follow a pretty similar formula, which is open with a personal story, like immediately. So if I'll use our advisors. So we have a great advisor in Arizona. She may be the best at it. And she, like, when the first words out of her mouth talk about when she was 7 years old and just, hearing these footsteps come down the steps, and basically it was her parents in a fight and had to leave. I mean, it's just this, it's not what you tend to expect from a financial seminar, right? So it's about that. How do you build that trust and connection out of the gate? Now, you also have to demonstrate that you're competent, know what you're doing, right? So there's going to be some topics that you're going to have to cover, but then I think it's so much about that connection. And I think so many people miss that these days. It's trying to impress people with knowledge or how smart you are, but I think it's that personal connection. Maybe in some ways, Phillip, like, despite the fact that we're connected from the sense of, like, technology, in some ways I think we're more disconnected from people than ever before. So I think that person who can really build that personal connection is going to win. And you said something that I just want to make sure I hit, for everybody, because it's maybe the most valuable thing that I do is, if you can send personal handwritten cards, and that can be to your existing clients, or prospective clients that you're pursuing, man, nothing will stand out more than that right now. It's just huge. I think it's one of the most powerful things that I've seen. I'll tie this into politics. Our insurance commissioner here in Kansas, who's awesome, she's done an incredible job, but I've never seen anything like it. Like we hosted an event for her, and I think every single person from our office that was at that event got a handwritten thank you card. This is in the middle of her campaigning, and I asked her chief of staff, she's like, she does that for every single person she meets, right? And she ends up running away with the election, right? Probably not a complete coincidence of how she approaches that. So I think that is anything you can do to personalize your message. And handwritten cards to me are one of the easiest ways to do that right now.
Yeah, I tell the story in my book. So in 2002, I worked for John Thune's U.S. Senate race out in South Dakota. And every Sunday, he would go to church with his family. And then when he got out of church, he would literally come to the office, because we worked for him like 7 days a week. We'd be at the office on Sunday. And he'd say, hand me a list of undecided voters, because we knew from the data, right, who were the undecided voters, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where he lived. And he would run around, drive to their houses, and knock on their door. I mean, it's insane. Like, who does that, right? Like, but there's a lesson there for business owners. There's a lesson there if you're trying to find investors, right? This personal time. I mean, that was back before social media. That was actually kind of normal. Like, I looked at that and I went, yeah, that's what you should do, right? Now it'd be like, are you crazy? That is an insane story, right? And that's how much we lost that personal touch. I think people in politics really do get that. I think politicians and political marketers really understand. I always say I love the politicians we work with, but I love the voters. I'm obsessed with the voters. I'm actually think more about what the voters want than I do about, caressing the ego of the politician I work with. And so sometimes that's to my detriment, but that's kind of where my mindset is. And I think that's what we're trying to get to is like, and you've really done a really good job with us at Advisors in the sense of always adding value, right? That's one of the things you guys do. But like, where was this is such a good lesson for anybody. I mean, first of all, I said this in my intro on my podcast about you, but I mean, you've built how much, real quick, sorry, I'm going to do this. How much money are you guys managing now between annuities and products you sell and wealth management and all that?
Well, so on an annual basis on the annuity side this year, we'll do through our advisors. I say we'll do right. The advisors that we support will do about $8 billion in new assets on the annuity side, and then we have AE Wealth Management, which is our registered investment advisory firm, which we'll bring in probably about 4.5 in new assets. We're currently managing there about $16 billion now, so and that's a newer business for us. That's the one that's probably growing and scaling, at a really rapid rate. We started that in 2016, so kind of our most immature business unit, I guess you would say. So,
but so you're around the 24-25 million all in.
Yeah, billion.
Sorry, yeah, big difference, billion.
Yeah,
and so okay, your story is really unique. Tell me, I mean, you guys started with your college buddy, and you started this, and then you've built this thing, and you saw a niche in the marketplace, just like all business owners that are successful do. They see a niche and they say, hey, no one's serving the advisors. Let's go build a business that serves the advisors. You did it. But what I've been most impressed on, what I've always sought your advice on through the years, is how did you exactly do it? I know how.
Sure.
You added more value. And this is good for marketing. It's good for just being a good human being.
It's good for retention.
It's great for retention. How have you guys made that the focal point? How have you looked at it?
Well, so I think one of the things you would hear me say this to every single new hire, right? Before we hire them, and then even after we hire them first day, is all things being equal, the business, or this is my belief, all things being equal, the business that adds the most value will always win. So I think if you first and foremost approach it with that mindset, like we want to win in business, we should figure out how to add as much value as possible. And honestly, you talked about how we met at Tony. That's a Tony thing, right? You hear him talk all the time about how to add massive value. Right. And so I think a principle there, but I would say the root of that was Dave and I tried to be financial advisors for a year. So I actually grew up in this industry, left to go be a financial advisor thinking like, I know everything I need to know, and realized really, really quickly that I wasn't really a financial advisor. What I was all of a sudden was a small business owner who happened to do financial services. And that's just a perspective I had never had before doing that. And I think Dave and I both realized really quickly how hard it is to run a small business. And every organization we would talk to that was helping financial advisors, like it was all the same thing. Like, here's a marketing program. Here's how to go do a seminar. We already knew how to do that. Or it was like, here's the products, that you have access to.
Here's the way these other things that went in. Go do it that way.
Yeah. So I think what we've, not to overcome, but I think this is great for any business owner to think about is, we put the advisor kind of in the center of our value proposition. And then we start just kind of mapping around that, like, what are all the different areas where these small business owner advisors are going to need support. So, we're probably one of the few organizations in the country that has, like, we have a team called Advisors Tech where we'll do like all the managed service provider stuff for our advisors. We probably support 300 advisors now, where it's like our team helps them manage, all their technology and security, and which has become a huge deal in our space.
They want to go sell that products and services. They don't want to deal with the technology.
So if we can help them do all those other things well to where they can do what they do best, which tends to be sit in front of clients. So I think that's it. I think every year, one of our we actually had our half year growth team offsite 2 weeks ago. And I mean, we spend the majority of the time looking at like, okay, in these different areas, what value are we adding? Where are we missing? And so I think just kind of ingrained in the culture of like, how do we add more value? How do we add more value? Now, that creates its own challenges. As the company grows and scales, that becomes a lot of work. We have a media team, which you've seen when you've been in here, so I think we produce probably 150 radio shows a week now, where, we help script, help co-host, buy the time, edit the shows, load them. When we started that, it seemed like a good idea. And now I think we've got 30 people to keep that machine running. So you do have to be thoughtful in that. And I think one of the exercises even we've gone through is like, is this really adding value still? Or was this something like we started doing and it's maybe not as useful as it used to be? Because you've got to do some selective, I think, pruning along the way too, as the world changes, like keeping legacy things around just because you've had them for a long time that consume a lot of time and resources that may not be as valuable anymore. So, but I mean, if people will just constantly be thinking about what can we do to add more value, I think you're always it's going to be hard to lose if you're approaching your business from that mindset.
Do you have a specific example or story on the adding of value with an advisor or somebody that you've seen that's been incredibly helpful, that you guys may have even said, let's take this somewhere else and try to do it somewhere else with some of the other advisors?
Well, I would say actually right now is one, as our advisors have scaled, a lot of them come to us and they're a pretty good advisor, maybe not a great business owner. They're definitely much more of a producer than a leader. And what I mean by that is like that advisor still seeing every client for the most part. Where a lot of them, if you look at our top advisors now, a lot of them don't see clients anymore. They lead a financial advisor or a financial services organization. So to give you a specific, like we just rolled out a hiring and recruiting service to help our advisors find really good associate advisors. So kind of a headhunter organization that literally goes out and recruits advisors to join their firm, because that was one of the we had a few advisors who were like, man, we need, as the business is growing and scaling, we're generating more leads. Now we need some good advisors to come into our system. That wasn't a lot at first, but now it's becoming a lot. It kind of
goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is this.
rolled that out, and that group has been packed, with people saying like, hey, we need an advisor in this market or this market. So that would be an example of something that, and Phillip, honestly, that's 10 years ago, that wasn't a need at all. So that goes back to that idea of constantly evaluating, like, hey, where's your client at today? And what are the things that they need today that they probably didn't need a few years ago? So I think that's for us, this next big evolution, or I think things that we're working on is how do we help them continue to grow and scale a sales organization? And it is how do you hire the right people, but then also how do you evolve? So a lot of what we're doing is how do you evolve as a leader of the organization? It's one thing if your primary job is to just sit in front of prospective clients and try and convert them every day. It's a whole different ballgame when it's now you're managing 30, 40 employees and having to track all that. So and that as you've grown and scaled the business too, just some of the challenges within that.
That makes sense. And it's I love the pruning part of what you just said too. Because, I'll give you an example, and you asked about we looked at probably more consumer data during the pandemic than any company in the world.
Yeah.
And we were looking at millions of data points a day, surveying hundreds of thousands of consumers, modeling it up in our database. And one of the things we saw was right before the pandemic, our data was saying that the messages that had worked for 8 straight years were look at me, sell me things that give me status and significance, make me look important, all these kind of things. That's what worked for almost every client we worked with up until the pandemic. Then all of a sudden in March of 2020, those messages would have lost your business if you ran them, right? But no one knew about it. That's why we started putting on all this data. And really the only messages that worked were trust, safety, and helping others. Like, how was your product or service building trust, showing safety, and actually helping others, your community, your family, and all the things that people were worried about during COVID. And so we had to prune those old messages because they just didn't work anymore. And I think when you go back to understanding in an empathetic way what your customers, investors, or whoever, what they think about, what they care about, you realize what you need to add to your message, where you need to go in different places to deliver that message, and where you can drop things from that message, like where you don't need to be. And, just in a very macro sense, 2 years ago, I would have, every data report we saw for various clients was all, Facebook was just great because of the targeting capabilities. It's a dog crap platform right now for a lot of buying and selling because people have lost so much trust in them, whether it be through the elections or through politics or the censorship or whatever it is, right? They by the way, they still scroll. They tell you they don't, but they do. Yeah, they scroll on it. Yeah. But they don't buy anything on it anymore. Now that's I'm giving a very generalized look at what we've seen. That may be different for different people. Maybe it's a great platform for others, but for the most part, the kind of clients we've seen, it's just, I keep telling them, Facebook is now a branding platform. You should be putting your stuff up there because they're going to see it. But it may drive them to your website, or it may be the 6th time they see your stuff, and then they go, you know what, I should buy that, or I should call that advisor, or I should buy that product or service. But people are just not buying things. And so in a way, we've pruned the conversion factor of Facebook in a lot of clients. And we've added it as a branding mechanism in a lot of ways. And it just constantly evolves. And that's what you're seeing as well.
Hey, one thing I do want to make sure that, and maybe we move into culture, growing and scaling a little, but I do want to ask you one more marketing thing before we jump off. So, because I know you talk about this in the book, and for the first time ever, the SEC made a marketing change that was beneficial to financial advisors. So advisors can now accept and market like online reviews.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I know that's a huge component to your Undefeated marketing system.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give me just some, or maybe give the people that listen to this some tips on taking advantage of that and doing it well. Because I've said, well, you and I went to Darren Hardy's HBF together, right? And this was a huge thing there too about reviews and online. But maybe just any tips that you have around that as people start to navigate this.
It is a huge issue. We're seeing it everywhere right now. And it's not 5-star, it's third-party validation. right? That's this trust factor is the number one issue that's converting people right now. 5-star reviews is one tactic in it, right? But I love it because I think it's super smart. And, we see this a lot. It's not just a 5-star review. It could be a client or a customer testimonial on an iPhone that you then upload to your website, and say, here are 10 reviews from moms or whoever your target market is. Like let's go back to that pool company, the on-demand pool company I told you about. They're actually their number one market from all the data we found was moms in between 35 and 50 who had kids in the household who were like, I need something for my kid to do this summer. Well, one of the things that we're adding into their strategic plan is video testimonials from moms talking about how great the pools are, how easy it is, all that kind of stuff. Because other moms are going to go to the website, see it, and then that's going to be like, it's not the owners going, we have a great product, buy our product. It's going to be the mom saying, this saved my life during the summer because my kids had something fun to do. And so it's the concept of the 5-star review. Now, I'll tell you how to use the 5-star review. This is my favorite. We do a lot of work in the pest control industry. And one of the big national pest control companies we worked with, they said, we helped them in this, but they decided to run a marketing campaign not to get new customers. I know that sounds weird. This is what we call innovation, guys. Everybody listening, this is innovation. They ran their first marketing campaign to get 5-star reviews, and then they used those 5-star reviews in their next marketing campaign to get customers. This company has 50,000 5-star reviews. Now, if you're going to go shop for a pest control company and you go into Google and you say, Topeka, Kansas pest control company, and you've got a pest control company that shows up and they have, 1 or 2 or 3 5-star reviews and maybe a couple 2-star reviews. And then there's another one that has 50,000 5-star reviews. Which one are you going to invite into your home?
Yep.
Like it's an automatic converter. It converts every time. It's why they dominate the marketplace. And they were innovative enough to say, well, let's don't go after the first customer or the first transaction is not our customer. It's the 5-star review. And then let's use the 5-star review as leverage for the next 20 years. So smart. God, it's so smart.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Do a campaign to get the reviews, then do a campaign around the reviews. Just like that's really, really good. So it's a lot
let me tell you something. Too. It's guaranteed to work. You want a guaranteed win in marketing? All right, and like in my book, I talk about the first transaction is actually not a conversion. I talk about this in one of my chapters, and I think that this is one of those examples. The first transaction should be the 5-star review.
Yep, I love it. So it's a huge. By
the way,
I think.
Sorry, let me interrupt.
I know you know it. It's just a huge opportunity.
My book right now, the Undefeated Marketing System, right? It's got I think 117 5-star reviews on Amazon. I've had more people reach out to me and go, "Oh, I bought your book because I saw how many 5-star reviews you have." Like I didn't market it that way. I just have a lot of 5-star reviews for the book, and that's been a huge factor in selling and getting business owners to see the message.
Okay, I want to talk culture because I know that's a conversation you and I have probably most frequently. So as you've grown and scaled, I know you hired a culture director. I was actually looking as we were preparing for this. I think you had sent it to me. Maybe it was a couple years ago when you did. I think you were on stage with Jay Abraham and we're talking about culture director that you hired. So maybe just talk through why you hired that position, what they do, and I'll tell you, copied you on that. We now have a full-time culture director. It's there. We had kind of a committee before. Now we have a full-time employee who that's their primary job. But yeah, just maybe talk through that position and some lessons learned through that. Okay,
so let me tell you a horrific failure of mine led to a lot of this. You and I are around the same age. We're in our 40s. And when we came up in, when I was working on political campaigns or working for other people, there was more of a dictator sense in your boss. Like you did what the boss said, you put your head down, they may yell at you. That's just life. Get over it, right? The world doesn't work like that anymore. So a couple years ago, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, one of my team members at one of my companies sent out a mass email, and she sent it out like 7 times in a row, the same email, right? And on the same day, our bookkeeper made an accounting error. It was like a $30,000 accounting error. It wasn't like I lost $30,000. It like didn't account for $30,000 in some expense, and so I thought we had a lot more money than we did. And then it was like something like that. So it was 2 big mistakes by 2 of the team members. And so because of the way that I've been raised in the working world, I yelled at these people and jumped on them. And they were millennials, and they did not apologize for their mistakes, which made me even angrier. Because I'm just one of those, if I make a mistake, I'll own it and I'll make it better. But they basically said, and I'm like, no, you made the mistake. And they go, yep, okay. And I'm like, just admit you made the mistake. Like, they wouldn't do it, right? It's crazy. Like, they knew they made the mistake. They wouldn't. So I just, jumped all over them. About 2 days later, the person that was doing, HR in our company calls me and says, you've been reported to me, to HR. And I said, I'm the owner. Like, what are you talking about? Like, huh? And they said, yep, the 2 people that made the financial mistake and the email blast mistake, those 2 people reported you for being mean. Now we're chuckling because we come from, an older generation where mean was just part of the playbook, right? Yeah. And I go, mean? I mean, I'm screaming, mean? They're the ones who made the mistake. Like, what are you talking about? I'm screaming. Are you crazy? And she's like, well, it's a problem. You're going to have to deal with it. And I said, all right, well, I'm hanging up this phone. I'm going for a walk. And so I went for a walk I was working at home that day, and I went for a walk in my neighborhood. And in that walk, I got, my head started to calm down a little bit. And then I decided to ask myself a question. What if I'm wrong and they're right? What would that look like? I just wanted to know what that would look like. And then I started answering that question. Well, they probably don't feel safe in their job. They probably are not very efficient in their job because they're worried about making mistakes, or they're worried about they're going to get yelled at. So maybe they're working at a 30% production rate when, if my management was better, they may be at 60, 70, 80% production rate. And I went, oh, okay, I got a problem. It's me. So I flew up to Washington, D.C., because I'm living in Florida, and I commute back and forth to that office. And I took each one out to coffee, and I personally apologized. And then it hit me that from that point forward, I could no longer manage a company the way I wanted them to work, that I had to manage a company the way that the employees worked. So from that point forward, we developed an employee plan where we try to understand the psychological drivers for that particular employee. What motivates them? Why are they excited to come to work? What's their purpose? Are they working for money? Are they working for titles? Or are they working to grow? What are they working for? What is their motivation? And then our culture director helps us set the tone. So we are working with those people to get them to be more productive, because we're managing to the way they want to be managed to. And the productivity rates have skyrocketed through our companies. Obviously, you can kind of look at that through bottom line growth, but the bottom line is, for us, is I had to realize that today's work world is about managing up, not managing down. Meaning I needed to, every single employee needs to be managed differently, needs to be looked at differently, needs to be understood differently, and needs to grow differently. And I need to be more thoughtful. And that culture director helps us harness all of that together. And they do HR as well, but the culture director does that. And really, the last thing is we have 2 values in our company. We don't have big mission statements or 27 things that we live by or anything like that. It's just give and grow. Give more than you take and always be growing. And when we say always be growing, it's kind of like adding value. Like, are you growing our clients' bottom lines? Are you growing your skill sets in this company to get even better? Are you growing out of your job to take another job higher? what are you doing to grow every day? And then always give more than you take. Like, that's it. That's what we preach more than anything else. And so by managing people to their styles and by emphasizing a culture of give and grow, we've really been able to really take our business to another level. And we talked about this earlier. If the employees are running this economy now, or the lack of employees, or the people out that aren't coming into the job force, you're going to have to think differently, manage differently, and run your business differently going forward. And this is not a bump in the road. I think this is a paradigm shift in the way the world works.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it everywhere. I think at AE we've still had a lot of success in recruiting, but it goes back to that specific thing, right? I think we've focused so much on the culture and this being a place that people want to work, that if you do that well, and that's one of those other maybe, switches that I see get flipped with the advisors we work, when they really embrace that, like, the better the team is, the better your business is going to be. It's a big thing. I always said, I said one of the things I say a lot is the business that provides the most value will always win. But people will ask us at times, they're like, so like, why do you guys focus so much on your culture? And I kind of grew up in a similar environment you did, right? You just did what you were told. You got yelled at sometimes. Like, it was, more of a, I would say before we started AE, the culture I worked in, they tried to do things that were fun, but there was still this fear and intimidation.
And it's not authentic.
Style,
You're
right?
like, they're just trying to check a box, right?
We had ping pong tables because, they read Zappos had ping pong tables, but then, you were threatened with your job every day. So,
and it's authenticity, right? I mean, if, I think people have to read.
Maybe that's the point I was going to make, is like, I think people ask me all the time, like, why do you focus so much? And I'm like, well, the philosophy was really, really simple. It's we're a service-based organization. Like, a lot of people listen to this show, probably a lot of the clients that you work with, we don't actually make something, manufacture something. So it comes down to the service we provide, which is provided by the people that work here. So we have this simple philosophy that if you enjoy coming to work, you're probably going to provide better service to our clients. So I always say, like, I just want this to be a place that people look forward to coming to, not dread coming to. So I think most of the decisions and things we do are based around that. How do we demonstrate that we care about them, that we're thankful that they show up to work here, and then that, by that, they do a really good job of taking care of the advisors.
Yeah, and listen, like, and by the way, you said something earlier. There's difference between culture and perks. Those are two totally different things, right? Ping pong tables are perks. Culture is being yelled at every day. So, like, what is that, right? And I think everybody's looking for authenticity. And the other thing is, you're gonna have people that take advantage of the generosity. And so many people like, well, people are just going to take advantage of that, right? Yeah, they are. How do you want to live your life? Do you want to be a jerk, or do you want to give and have 30% of the people take advantage of you and 70% of the people appreciate that? I mean, how do you want to live your life? Like, that's what you've got to do. And by the way, I struggle still with this. I work through all this stuff all the time. This is not easy. We're one of the perks that we have in our company is unlimited personal time off. Unlimited, right? Are there people that would take advantage of that? Yeah, but they probably won't work here very long if they take advantage of, if they're just leaving for a month at a time. Like, they can't do their jobs that way. But you want to tell the team, I trust you, so don't sweat. Oh my God, I only get 10 days of work time off a year. I got to strategically think about this weekend, that weekend. Like, I don't want them fretting over that. That's a perk, by the way. It's not culture. But the way we handle that is culture. The way we say, we trust you first. Now go do your job and grow and give and do all the things you need to do to be successful. The only way it's going to work is if you give first.
So you're doing the unlimited PTO, which is, I've seen more and more companies do that, which I think is unique. We've talked about that, but just haven't been able to figure out how to make that work in our model. One of the other things that you do that I just love you to talk a little bit about, because you manage your entire team remotely. Like you're not actually in the office. The majority of your team is. How do you do that? What have been some of the pros and cons of that? I guess the pro is you get to pick where you want to live. But what have been some of the challenges? Because I think more and more people are going to be dealing with some, work from home, remote work, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been paying for an office in Alexandria, Virginia, and paying 5 figures a month since March of 2020, and no one's been in that office since March of 2020. And we can't get out of the lease, right? So yeah, that's another challenge of this whole thing. But our team is remote, and frankly, a lot of them have moved out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
We have team members in New Mexico and Texas and Florida and Georgia now, and in Seattle, Washington. We have a lot of different places that they've moved to remotely. And frankly, that is a reality. You just have to figure it out, because you can't tell the person that moved to Seattle a year ago during COVID, time to move back to Washington, D.C. They're done. Like, they're going to quit. That's a fact. Like, there's a great saying in politics, Cody. There are things you can change, and there are facts. A candidate's spouse is a fact. Trying to argue with a candidate's spouse that they don't know what they're talking about is not going to ever go well, because they're the fact, right?
Yep.
Work remote for us is a fact. Like, people will quit if we say you got to come back, right? Now we can do it like it's like, hey, come back once a month for a couple of days and we all get together. But I think this is what you're going to see, is that we bring different groups together that need to be together and work together and spend a couple of days together, and then shepherd them off and let them go do their work. And they do the work or they don't. I miss it. I think it's. I think when we're all together, we do a better job.
Yep.
But that's not the reality of the world anymore. And frankly, because of COVID, everybody has now worked remote, and that's what they want to do. And if I'm supposed to serve them, then I have to say, then we got to we have to make it work.
Yep.
And so obviously there's a lot of Zoom calls. But there's also a lot of trust. And when you have trust, you have a lot more motivated workforce to say, hey, if you just trust me, I'm going to get the job done. And maybe I don't need to sit in an office 10 hours or 9 hours. Maybe I can get it done in 6 hours. And as a CEO, I have to be okay with saying, okay, well, maybe it's 6 hours. You get it done, I'm okay with that, right? And it's just different. And we're all in this transition trying to figure it out. I don't have any silver bullet other than it's a fact for us.
Well, and that's what I think you have to figure out. Like, I think the thing that's going to be problematic is people who try and do both is kind of what I'm seeing. Right. So, we've kind of made our bet on that. We're going to bet on the culture and bringing people together, and we'll see if it's right or wrong. And we're resigned to the fact that we may lose some people who decide like, hey, I want to work from home over a period of time. But also, all I would say is what we're also thinking about is like, okay, but what in our model needs to be different? So like, while we don't do unlimited PTO, like we've made changes and adjustments around just like maximum flexibility. So you need to take your kid to the doctor. Like 10 years ago, you probably would have turned in time off, stuff like that. Like go take your kid to the doctor, so I think we're trying to figure out how to adjust through some of those different things. Let me ask you a question, because we were talking about this when we had lunch together down in Florida. And you mentioned the word about like trusting your team, and I'm just going to bring it up. You had a situation that kind of went bad in one of your companies and kind of some setbacks there, which is someone that you maybe turned a little bit too much trust over to too quickly. But any lessons that you learned through that as you've had time to kind of reflect on that over the past few months?
I trusted an operator type to be doing a role of, look, if many people that are listening to this are business owners, the most successful companies have 2 people. One's a visionary and one's an implementer or integrator, right? It's if you read the book Traction, there's a lot of, it really lays it out how it is.
Yep.
And that's absolutely been my success. In my political marketing agency, I have one of the best integrators of all time, a guy named Dean Petrone, who is like a brother to me. We are just lock and step, right? We just cannot function. He knows he needs my vision, and I know I need his integration. Mm-hmm. And we built that into an 8-figure company in 3 years because of that uniqueness and that trust. And so my ignorance was that when you find such an amazing partner, when you go try to create it in another company, you think you just go find my integrator and we're good to go. And I did, and I found a really talented person who was a really great person, human being, and really smart, but not a very good integrator. And that person, I just didn't understand that the integration wasn't getting done. And it really never affected our clients, but it affected our internal operations. All the things we're trying to build internally so that we're great for our team, that our team is great for our clients and all that kind of stuff. And at a certain point, it just came to a head in early 2021. And yeah, we lost a significant amount of people in the company over it. And we had to rebuild. And we did. And we've since found a new operator who's sort of my right-hand person and my partner in this. And holy cow, I mean, we are just on fire right now. And it just, my biggest mistake in this whole thing was I trusted and I didn't verify. And I think I got very spoiled because I have such a good partner on one side of my business, who I'd never even had to verify. He just did it all. He's just the ultimate trust partner, right? And I just figured that those people fell from trees. I just figured that's just easy to find. And that's on me. I own that. But so for me, to build the kind of things we're talking about, you've got to have a good partnership and someone that, for me, I'm all vision. I like to write. I like to be creative. I like to get in the weeds and understand what our clients are doing, and then and then solve those problems. I like to do all that stuff, right? And there's just certain things in the company that have to be implemented, the accountability, the structure, the systems, the processes that have to be involved in the company for you to grow and take the next step. And so we're on that path now, but it's a painful learning lesson for me.
Well, and it's one you see repeated. Yeah, I've seen it with advisors. There's especially when so many of the advisors we work are entrepreneurial, right? They are kind of the vision of it. And so there's those things. I think that's why you and I get along very much the way I'm wired too. Like love the vision and where we're going. Ask me to manage it on a day-to-day basis, and I lose interest really, really quickly. Yeah. And I don't do it well. But I think sometimes what happens is you're so anxious to be able to offload those that when you get someone that you think can take those things that you don't enjoy doing, you're more than happy just to dump it on them and not verify, as you said, make sure that they're doing a good job. So I know it's a mistake that I've seen made many, many times from a lot of the advisors we work with, and even other friends who are business owners there too. So I wanted to make sure that we hit that. So
we decided to do the tip of the week. So here is my tip, and it is inspired by you, Cody. A long time ago, you gave me this PPI program, right? It for you guys, it stands for
personalized positive impact.
Personalized positive impact. We stole your idea, modeled it, and that's a better way of saying it. And we call it the big personal impact. And what big personal impact is exactly what we talked about, like in the culture, like understanding how other people function, right? And so we have this policy that we try to adhere to at our companies, which is we try not to give gift cards as gifts. We try to give thoughtful, meaningful gifts, whether it's to clients, to employees, to whatever. And one example of that was we had a team member of ours he was very close to his grandparents. They were in their 90s, and they both were put in the hospital a few years ago. And when we found out the hospital they were in and their names, and we sent like a $300 thing of flowers to the grandparents, and we wrote a note that said, you've never met us, but your son works for our company, and he is an amazing human being, and you'd be so proud to know of how he represents your family and your name, and we hope you get better, and we just want you to know how proud you should be of your grandson. And we could have given that employee $1,000 for doing a great job. Instead, that person still works for me 5 years later. And part of that is because he understands our authenticity. He understands that we We don't just say one thing, have ping pong tables, and then yell and threaten people on the side. That what we say and how we think of things is thoughtful and kind and authentic. And for me, that is a great way that we call it the Big Personal Impact Program. You call it the PPI program. But ultimately, it's about finding ideas and things that are personal, that aren't like a gift card, which is nice, but people forget gift cards real easy. Another person that really understands this is John Rowland with Giftology. But we've been doing this for years. You were doing it well before Giftology. He is just putting it on steroids right now, which is really cool. You can look up Giftology. It's a great book, and it'll teach you a lot about this. But the bottom line is, we try to think about when we give gifts to people or thankful for people, how do we do it in a thoughtful and personalized way? You can do this for customers. You can do this for clients. You can do this for your own team members. But for me, that's the tip of the week, and we have it's been extraordinarily popular and successful for us.
Well, just to reinforce it, I think we tend to focus it more on the client, but we have started actually thinking through like, okay, why aren't we doing this internally also,
right.
And figuring out ways. But at the client level, I think even maybe at Business Mastery, I played that example, and I probably have hundreds of these where, and it was something simple. Our employee found out, one of our advisors' fathers had passed away. He was talking about this poem he had written his mom, and she went and tracked down, he actually read her the poem on the phone. So she had him go pull the recording, transcribe the poem, and then went and found a picture of his dad on Facebook, and just had this, I don't know, wall poster thing made, that had his dad's picture in this poem. Cost her, I don't know, what might have cost us $20, $30, something like that. And it took her a little time to do it. But he leaves this voicemail, and if you remember this, he can't get through. He keeps trying to leave this message and just keeps breaking down. And so that's the whole goal of it, is how do you find something that really connects with people on an emotional level, which just shows them that you're actually paying attention to what's going on in their life and care about them, more than just a business transaction or business relationship. So I'm glad. I know you've taken that and really ran with it.
You're the inspiration.
I've just seen the benefit.
For the tip of the week this week. So anybody out there, I'm telling you, it's a great ROI, but it's also just a good way to be in life first, and it's a great ROI second.
That's good. Well, let me ask you some questions. So I've ended every one of my podcasts with, I don't know, call them a lightning round, whatever you want. I always say these are questions that I always ask people I get a chance to meet, just for my own personal knowledge. So I'm start asking them, to everyone I have on the podcast so other people can hear them too. But we'll bounce through these, and if you have any final questions, we'll wrap it up. But this is the one I've been asking everyone this year. What lesson, if there were one lesson that you learned over this past stretch, starting with March of 2022, that you'll carry forward for the rest of your career life, what is that lesson?
Balance. COVID was a very painful time for me to self-reflect on my own life, and I realized that how imbalanced my life was and how many people had to suffer at the hands of my imbalance. And one of the great silver linings out of COVID was the need to love myself more, the need to give my commitment to my family more, and to have a better balance between work and business. I mean, I joke around a lot that my wife has told me, Cody, that if I write another book in the next 2 years, we'll be divorced. But there's a lesson in that as well.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to run
I was going to say, is there a change that you've made?
And then write a book, and during a pandemic where you're trying to save all your companies, I mean, we grew and during the pandemic, but you didn't know month to month there. You didn't know. Every month was different. And then you're writing a book. I mean, people pay the price for that. And I love writing books. I want to write another one, but until I have more balance in my life, that's just not going to happen. Sorry, I know it was a light.
Let's wait at least 2 years to write that next book. Otherwise, that'll be a really expensive book.
Yeah.
Let me back up to that question. I know it's supposed to be a lightning round, but is there one change that you're making to improve that balance?
Yes, loving myself more.
Cool.
One thing I have lacked my entire life.
Let me ask a second question. When you look back and reflect on kind of your business career, what's one thing that you've done that helped you move from being good to great as a business owner?
Yeah. Well, this isn't your podcast is for investors. So one question I always ask people is, what is the most valuable stock in your portfolio? It's a trick question. I'm not doing it to you. They tell me what it is, right? It's some investment they made in a startup or in a stock or something like that. And then I say, well, mine is me. And so the difference makes a difference. We wouldn't be here right now if I didn't invest $20,000 to go to a business mastery with Tony Robbins. Like, I wouldn't have met you. I've now probably invested close to $500,000 into my own education over the last 6 years. I've taken every type of business class possible, and that's given me infinite success. So investing in myself and knowing that I'm making an investment and it's not a cost.
Which is a great transition to my third question, actually. What are you doing this year for your own personal growth and development that you're excited about?
So my partner and I decided to join a mastermind called War Room, which is run by Roland Frazier and Ryan Dice of Traffic and Conversion Conference and all that. It's a digital marketing mastermind. We did it because they actually have a lot of fun. So we said, my partner Dean, who I talked about earlier, we were like, let's do something where we can learn, but also fun. If you go to a Tony Robbins event, you're going to be there like 16 hours a day and you never go outside. Yeah. And I love that. But we also were like, War Room is like meet from 9 to 4, and then you stay at an incredible hotel with a beautiful view, and you go out to dinner and have fun with people. And we decided we needed to add a little bit more fun. So we're doing War Room right now. I'm in a family mastermind called Front Row Dads, you've heard of. And those are the kind of investments I'm making this year. But, what I've really decided, and then the last thing is, what I've decided for me is maybe less events in the future and more one-on-one coaching with some really high-end coaches that can really help me develop where we want to build and take our company to the sort of the 9-figure level.
That's cool. We had Ryan speak. We've had him speak a couple times. Had him speak in March for us. He's a stud. That'll be a fun group. So
yeah, it is.
He's been super helpful for us. Okay, the number one book that you recommend to other entrepreneur business owners can't be your own.
Yeah, never do that. I'm going to do 2. Okay. One is Driven to Distraction by Ned Hallowell. I think for a lot of us entrepreneurs, we're all ADD, and it is a way to figure out how your brain works, where you put the most energy in when you're on fire, how you do analytical work, when you do more connective work, based on when you have the most energy and the least energy. And it's a really good focus book on that, and just how our society is driven to distraction by electronics, and how to put those down and really get you focused on what you need to do. And the other is Never Split the Difference. That is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. If I read that book and called my editor and said, my book needs to have a similar flow.
Yeah.
I want my book to all be about stories, engaging stories, things that just totally entertain you but teach you. That's how Never Split the Difference was for me. It was just, I've read it like 6 times. Like, I just think it's such a good book. And I like Chris Voss a lot. So
yeah, he's great. Good ones. Okay, final question. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
It's not about you.
That's good. All right, my man.
Hold on. What are your best books?
Well, best book is a theory. I would say the 2 books I tend to recommend the most. One is probably The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That's from a business standpoint something I recommend, because and probably the reason I recommend it is what I've seen is it's not any one big thing. It's like all these little things that you do consistently well over time, compound into to the success that you want to have. That is one. The other one is The Greatest Question Ever by Andy Stanley. Mm-hmm. And it's a simple read. I read it probably every other year, I guess now. I used to read it every year. But that is basically what the premise of the book is. You get yourself in trouble when you ask the question, is this right or wrong? Because you can always justify why it's not wrong. And more or less what Andy says is the better question to ask yourself is based on who you're trying to be. Is this a wise decision to make? So just something that is a good reminder, and not just business, but I think, your personal life and everything else. Most people, they don't get in trouble overnight. It's they kind of creep closer and closer to the edge until you're too close. So those are probably the two that I've recommended the most.
What education are you looking at this year?
Well, so we had John Maxwell, and
Nice.
and John's on the podcast. We had him speak at our World Series event that we moved to June. Actually, the one I flew out to when I was down in Florida seeing you. And so he has a pretty small mastermind group that is sold out, but they're going to let us come attend. So I'm going to do that. Super excited about that. And then I have a group. John, I don't know if I even talked to you since, and he was just incredible. Like it's hard to explain how great he was there. And so, but the thing people don't get to see is, like, I spent a fair amount of time with him backstage, and he makes you feel like you're the only person that's even around. It was pretty fascinating to observe.
Yeah.
So excited about that. Just other great entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders. So doing that. And then I have a small group of guys that I've gotten together with for years. We're getting together in October, so excited about that because we didn't do it in 2020. Which I could feel it, man. It's just good to be around other people. Which is the component of events that I do like. I think if I were to look back, there's nothing that's helped me grow faster than just the people that I'm able to spend time around.
Totally.
So,
and then best advice you've ever been given?
Oh man, I always ask that question, and then people ask me that one back. But I would say, and I don't know if it's. I guess maybe it's advice, but it's just make the most of the opportunities that you've been given, and I think that's just a kind of a driving force in my own life. Is I know we've been really, really blessed in ways that aren't just because we're smart and good at what we do. So I think my drive is to make sure that I'm maximizing and making the most out of those opportunities, and see a lot of people that don't do that. So
love it. Well, Cody,
Perfect.
Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on my podcast. So we'll see how this thing turns out. But it was
quick,
fun.
Tell my audience where they can find you and where they can subscribe and anything else you want to relay.
Yeah, so podcast. My podcast is called The Business of Advice Podcast. Depending upon when you air this, it may not even be live yet. So we're doing about 15 shows before we launch it. But Business of Advice Podcast. I'm not on a lot of social media. I'm not trying to build a big following necessarily. So you can find me on Twitter. I think it's Cody G. Foster. It's about the only social media platform I'm active on. AdvisorsExcel.com is our website. So, some of the things we talked about with culture and that, you can find some cool stuff on there, especially on our careers page and stuff that you can go check out too. So, and same back to you.
Yeah.
And primary, Phillip, I'd love for you to throw out, I know you send out kind of that email blog that you do that has just incredible content. So maybe share with the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, you can go to phillipstutts.com. You could probably get in your show notes. I'll probably do the right spelling.
Yep.
A couple
we'll
of things. We talked about how to use data to understand your customers or your investors or whatever. We do have a free data assessment that my team will give you to kind of show you how we look at the data and how we can help, businesses. That's at phillipstutts.com/insights. I do have a marketing blog where we talk about marketing and data and observations that we're seeing and stories and lessons learned. So if you want to I always say just like your podcast, Cody, we have the Undefeated Marketing podcast is mine. It's free. We give a tip of the week every time to learn something. It doesn't cost you anything. I write every 2 weeks. I've done it for 3 years. We've built a massive blog out of it, writing about data and marketing and the ways that you can improve your marketing. That's at phillipstutts.com. Just click on Marketing Tips tab and sign up. Those are the best ways to do it. And then I have winbigmedia.com as our corporate marketing company.
And people should. So listening to mine, go listen to Philip's podcast. I literally just listened to your interview with, I was telling you, David Meerman Scott earlier this week. And the James Altucher one was awesome. And so just some incredible guests on there.
James Altucher, the most interesting man in the world. If you don't
he
know
really
who he
is.
God, he's so interesting. But he wrote the foreword to my book too. He's just a great guy. Great guy.
Yeah, he is interesting is a good way to describe
He's
that.
a grandmaster chess champion. He's a stand-up comedian. He's a hedge fund investor. He's started 20 companies. 18 of them have failed. 2 of them have had massive exits. He's just crazy. He's all over the place. He's the most interesting man in the world. Seriously, go listen to him.
He is. It's good. So go listen to his podcast. Buddy, we'll have to do it again. We'll get some other topics and do this once again. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good to catch up.
Good seeing you, man.
Thank you.